And happy Friday. So here we are covering energy flow in an ecosystem, and let's just dive into it. So, of course, all energy systems in general, there are exceptions, but in general it is safe to assume that they all begin with that. And hopefully everybody knows what our sun looks like when you remove the blinding layer of visible light, right? Our energy starts in the sun. Now, from the sun, it travels all the way down to Earth, and there it's captured by our chlorophyll pigments along the membrane layers of the thylakoid grana inside the chloroplast organelle, which then functions through photosynthesis in order to create the glucose sugar that cellular respiration needs to break down in order to get the ATP. So, all right, starts with the sun and then to here. Wonderful. We know that. We've gone over that. Mr. Matthews, we've already covered photosynthesis so much, I really don't want to hear that word again in my senior year. No problem. I hear you. Let's move on. Because once we go past that first step of photosynthesis, it gets a lot harder to track and make sense of. There's a lot of stuff in one community. In one community, who knows how many different directions, how many different transfers, how many different steps this energy is going to take. Now, generally speaking, for all of ecology, we want to be able to identify these three classes. We need to know our producers, which is easy. That's our photosynthesizers. We need to know our primary consumers, otherwise known as our herbivores. They eat the producers. And then we need to know our secondary or tertiary or quaternary consumers, our carnivores, the predators that are up. So the carnivores eat the herbivores eat the producers. This is nothing new. And you have all seen food chains. The corn goes to the rat, goes to the owl, the carrots, etc., 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 right? And they can be very simple like the top one, they can be very long like the bottom one. But what does that arrow actually symbolize? When we see the arrow moving from the corn to the rat, what does that arrow mean? Now your initial thought might be that the corn is going into the rat. Like it is being eaten by the rat. And that's not a bad answer at a basic level. But in ecology, yes, that is it. The arrow is the energy moving from one to the next. We're not concerned about the physical material. We're concerned about the energy that's involved. Now, this could this could work, but this eagle, that thing will eat a rabbit. This fox will eat a rat. Fox will probably also eat something like a frog. The rabbit will eat corn, it will eat grass. So while we take a look at these, the food chain is decent. It's good for simple energy transfer, but it is not enough to really be the whole thing. For that, we want a food web. And a food web is really nothing more than multiple food chains that have been stitched together by the additional interactions that we're going to see. And you've all worked with food webs before. I'm not going to be concerned with that. But what I am concerned with is why is a squirrel a better meal for the hawk than a snake is? Why would this snake be a poor choice? Why do hawks prioritize eating squirrels rather than snakes? And this one starts to get a little bit more complicated. Similarly, mountain lions. Can they eat snakes? They absolutely can. But generally, it's really not going to be their focus. They're mostly going to be looking for rabbits and deer. Now, there is a reason. Yes. Good, you guys are on top of this. The easiest way to view most of these things is through an ecological pyramid. Hopefully, this is actually mostly feeling like review to you guys now. And as you take a look going up an ecological pyramid, what we're doing is we're moving up through the different levels of a food web, right? We've got, once again, those producers at the bottom, those herbivores, and the carnivores, and the secondary predators, and then your apex up at the top. Now, the key here is look at the size of each colored slice, because the size of the slice tells you the amount of everything. If I want to say where is the most energy, it's with the producers. It's the biggest slice. If I want which one of these will have the largest population, it's the producers. It's the biggest slice. If I ask, all right, but what about biomass? Like if I take all of these organisms and I could magically separate them out into one side of a scale and weigh them, which one of these layers would have the greatest biomass? That's also the producers. It's the biggest slice. All right, so the ecological pyramids are great. They're super easy because you just pay attention to their size. The apex predators are the least of everything. They have the least energy, the fewest in population, and the least biomass. Now, this led to a very, very common issue that we had in ecology. All right, when we take a look at the numbers here, and I recognize that this one does not have producers here at the bottom. It's going with the lowest thing, that the lowest animal that's eaten, not plant, so whatever. But it's close. All right, if we take a look at these numbers, which one do you think is going to be the single most important layer towards the health and stability of this ecosystem? So if I was going to do something terrible ecologically and I was just going to annihilate one of these levels, looking at it, which one do you think is the one that we should keep? The single most important, the one that we've got to protect. And I see the freshwater shrimp. And it makes sense, right? There are 10,000 of them. They're the base of this one. It's safe to say that if the shrimp aren't there, then the bleak can't eat them, the perch can't eat the bleak, etc., etc., etc. So the freshwater shrimp would be considered the most important ones. Now, largely, that's because of the energy transfer. And we had Matt say that energy is lost as you go up. Yeah, a lot of it gets lost. Every trophic level transfer, 90% of the available energy is lost. We use it to incorporate, to build proteins, to keep ourselves functioning. And that energy is radiated off. It is not transferable. And so, when you go up a trophic level, the amount of calories that you get from your meal goes way, way down. Why do we like eating things like cows and pigs and deer and all the other meat animals? Where would they fall on this food chain? Second question to go along with that: have any of you ever eaten top predator? Have any of you ever eaten an eagle or, you know, something like that? All right, so let's see. Nope, no, not a meat person. All right, well, Matt says he's eaten shark. Now, generally, as you go up, I mean, Mikey's really got the right idea here. We don't like the taste of predators as much. They don't have the amount of calories that we're looking for. We respond very positively to fat in our food. It's why ice cream is wonderful, right? We respond to that fat, to that sugar. The higher you go up, generally speaking, and there are exceptions, but generally speaking, it's just not quite as good. And frog would be up, like, maybe up towards the snake level, because the frog probably ate the beetles probably ate the producers. But yeah, there's it's generally just not quite as good. Now, if you follow this line of reasoning and you accept population numbers, the amount of energy available, um, we can start to understand territory. Now, I know that this is probably making your eyes start to kind of like bend together, but let's take a look. All of these green things are separate producers. All right, different plants, grass. These orange circles represent the herbivores. Now, they all need a little bit of space. They all need enough food encircled in their territory in order to have enough energy to survive. Right? Now, we're going to bring in our first level of carnivore predator. All right, the carnivores are going to need enough territory to really get enough. And they may overlap just a little bit here, but that's probably not going to be an issue because there's some extra that they can withstand. When we start to get up towards the top predators, we start to get larger and larger areas of competition. Because in order for a top predator to survive, it needs to eat so much food. For instance, does anybody know why they mine the sun? That would be interesting. Um, does anybody know what a lion does for most of its day? Like all those documentaries you see in the African savannah, and those golden brown lions are there. Yeah, they sleep. Lions sleep 18 to 20 hours a day. And the reason for that, people, you guys are dead on point. This is awesome. Is that they don't get enough energy, right? By the time the energy reaches them at the top of that food chain, there are so few calories left that in order to survive, they have to adopt a very, very minimal energy lifestyle because otherwise they would burn through the calories that they're getting. Yeah. So when we take a look at territories now, normally we'd be sitting in the classroom right now, and I would point out through that big side windows, those three, and I would say, all right, imagine that we take a giant cage, right, and we slam it down over all of the fields for the school, right? Like just like a big dome right over the school, over the sports field next to it, into the woods, maybe a little bit of the river, right? And then the next step is how many beetles do you think live in that same domed area? You know, there's going to be probably thousands, millions of them, maybe. How many frogs and toads? Well, now there's an awful lot less. How many snakes? Well, even fewer yet. And then I ask if we took one red tailed hawk and released it into that same dome, covering the school and the surrounding area, how long would it survive? And most people kind of come up with the idea that not long. Because that territory, something that big, multiple huge fields and stuff like that, still isn't going to be enough territory to keep that one top predator alive due to the calorie requirements and the amount of energy that drops at every level. So, this becomes super important to understanding how ecology works because we really, really focused. Oh, sorry. We really focused on the producers. They were the most important. They were the bottom of the food chain. They were where all the energy was. And for an unbelievable time of ecology, that is what we focused on. The gentleman you see here is Alan Savory. Some of you may or may not be familiar with him. He caused quite a stir. He was part of a massive research project to the ecology of southern Africa. And him and his team actually came up with the idea that because of increasing desertification, more and more of the land turning more and more desert and supporting less and less life, that the problem was too many plants were being eaten. And him and his team made the call that they needed to cull, Africa did, their large herbivore population And in doing so, him and his team were responsible for the death of over 40,000 elephants that were shot and killed in order to cull the numbers to protect the landscape. It's not something he's proud of. It's not something he's happy with. He was working with the scientific understanding of the time. But once again, important to note, go back to our basic rule. Whenever humans take a look at a natural system and we figure out that we have a solution, we've generally messed it up worse. And this was no different. But it was all focused on the producers. We've got to protect the plants. We must protect them so that they can grow, so that they can protect everything else. And whenever populations have gotten large, if Maddie was in class right now, she would freak out seeing this. Those are rabbits. Thousands upon thousands of rabbits. We'll see this image again later in this unit. They've been destroyed in order to protect the environment, to keep them from eating everything. And then, of course, if we see other problems, we'll cull the predators too, because we think they're the issue. And that's going to bring us to our video today. The video today is about the green world hypothesis and this revolutionary idea in like the 60s and 70s in trying to understand how ecology works. And the idea was basically maybe the predators are the most important aspect of a stable ecosystem. And I'm not going to pursue it any further than that. I want to leave you guys to discover it as you watch the video. Now, if anybody is watching this video, what you want to look up is HHMI, and the video is called Some Animals Are More Equal Than Others. It's a great video, just like everything HHMI does. It's phenomenally well done, and it really explains this clearly. Take a look. See how that works with the stuff that we've covered here today.